History was made at South America Mission's Ammi Training Center in Chapada dos Guimarães, Brazil in July of 2012. 2,300 Christians came together for 4 days to celebrate the growing Indigenous Church of South America at the 7th International Congress of CONPLEI. CONPLEI is the Congress of Indigenous Evangelical Pastors and Leaders. 20 years ago, CONPLEI began with a meeting of a few young Terrena Indian Christians in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. Today, it's an international organization with influence throughout the Amazon basin, sometimes called the Green Window. CONPLEI is calling together representatives of many tribal nations in the region who name Jesus Christ as their Savior and Lord. At this, their 7th International Congress, 81 different ethnic groups gathered together to celebrate God's redeeming power in their lives and to plan for the establishment and expansion of a strong indigenous church in South America. A genuinely indigenous church in every tribe was the new battle cry for once warring tribal nations who now join together in worshiping Jesus, their risen Lord. Previous CONPLEI meetings have stressed the history of evangelism among the tribes of South America. First, there was a wave of foreign missionaries. Later came a second wave of missionaries from the growing Brazilian National Church. Now a new third wave, the Indigenous Church, is reaching out to other tribes who have not yet heard the gospel. That imagery of the three waves evolved at this Congress into the biblical image of a cord made up of 3 strands. Wound together, this cord is far stronger than any of the 3 strands alone. Speakers from Brazil, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guatemala, and North America all stress the importance of the whole church unifying to meet the desperate spiritual need of the unreached tribes of South America. And they all emphasize the need to train indigenous pastors and leaders for a truly indigenous church. There was serious work going on during the 4 days of the Congress. At the same time, songs in various languages, dances of praise, feathered headdresses, handmade necklaces and earrings, and painted arms, legs, and faces express the variety, the creativity, and the beauty of native cultures. A parallel kids program, plus all kinds of vendors of food, handmade candies, handcrafted ornaments, and the displays representing ministry organizations added to the atmosphere of a state fair. The singing and dancing continued late each night.
Pode beijar.
The meeting ended Sunday with a wedding, the Lord's Supper, and a special acknowledgement of the role of South America Mission in both the history of CONPLEI and the Ammi Training Center.
Brothers, we'd like now to give thanks to God for SAM, South America Mission, who were the first to make contact with the Terrena people 100 years ago, starting in 1912.
Quero dizer uma coisa aqui, que o indígena também é a imagem e semelhança de Deus.
The indigenous people of the world are made in the image of God, just like any other people. They also have the right to the promises of God, and they have the responsibility of their obligations to God. We are God's heirs and His agents. We tribal believers need to understand our role as missionaries to the unreached tribal peoples. But the indigenous church cannot do this work alone. We are only one of the strands in the 3-stranded strong cord of the church. And nothing will stop us. Nothing will stop us.
E ninguém vai poder impedir essa luz de raiar sobre essas nações.
The 7th Congress itself stands as an example of the effectiveness of this 3-stranded cord. On the Ammi campus, established and operated by South America Mission, teams of workers from Michigan and Pennsylvania, nearby Brazilian churches, and churches from the Amazon and Rio de Janeiro all came to help feed, house, and provide necessities such as water, sanitation, and security for the Congress. CONPLEI, a totally indigenous organization, planned the program and invited the tribal pastors. Many churches in the United States and Brazil raised money for this important event, and representatives from 81 tribes and 15 countries came to share in the joy of the Lord. The Congress also highlighted a dramatic example of the reconciliation found only in Jesus. Two formerly hostile tribes, the Surui and the Zoro, each of which now has an established church, made a public announcement of their newfound peace through Jesus Christ and worshiped God together in a jubilant dance of praise. Some have said it's time for the foreign missionaries to turn over their work to their successors, the now established local churches that they came to build and which have now grown to maturity. But CONPLEI has a different perspective. There is still much work to be done, and no one group can do it alone. Jesus desires unity in His body. Let's all work together to reach the goal of a genuinely indigenous church in every tribe. All three strands are needed to make the strongest cord. So ask yourself, what is your part in this three-stranded missionary cord? Men and women from the North American church are still needed to prayerfully consider joining this effort. Is God calling you to join in this movement to build His church in the Amazon basin? You could be on the front lines of where God's Spirit is actively seeking the still more than 200 unreached tribes in the Amazon basin. You can become a partner with South America Mission and the Brazilian and indigenous churches. Contact Sam on our website, www.southamericamission.org.